Joye Peterson, and welcome to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. Today, my guest is Dr. Joye Pugh. Let's see if I can get this out correctly this time. We're going to be talking about the fact that we are more than grains of sand. Thank you for coming on today, Joye.
Oh, listen, thank you for asking me to be on this wonderful show. It will be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to talking about what is my passion and why I do what I do.
That's why I do what I do. First off, can you explain to those listening what you mean by we're more than grains of sand?
Well, in my lifetime, the work that I've done and the number of books that I've written and the research that I have done about the end of days and being a Christian and trying to get the understanding of where we fall into all of that, I have found through the research that science and religion are really together, and that science is now proving everything that religion has always told us. And so where at one time it was really believed that we were just from a big bang, and we were created, now everything has design. And so most of the physics and things that I research have proven that we are not here by anything other than by design. And if you have something by design, it's not chaotic, because when you put two big bangs together, everything goes every which way and it's chaotic.
And it's a mess.
Yes, and nothing in this world is really, we might feel like it's chaotic, but everything has a true rhyme and reason. Everything's got a timer on it. Everything has a reason for why it exists. And so when we look at DNA now, we can really tell that the DNA was not from a monkey. The theory of evolution was a scientific, theory that many people wanted to believe in. But now that science has unraveled our DNA, our chromosomes and things of that nature, we find that there's 223 chromosomes and genes in our body that don't have a beginning in a monkey. And so therefore, you can't just make it go like, here's a monkey, and then all of a sudden there's this big gap, and then there's a human.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. And so it's a thrill to me to be able to show in the research that I've done, in the books that I have written, because they're all nonfiction, they're very researched, is to really show you and make you understand that you are here for a reason. Sometimes you may feel like, well, I don't have a talent, or God didn't give me this, or I'm poor, or I'm overly rich. Whatever the concept is, you have got to take time to really get to know who you are and why you're here. And scripture just opens up a world for you that gives you a discernment. And in that discernment, you find these little nuggets of why you have become who you are. Now, in some cases, you may have become a very bad person, and if you will go back and look at some of the things that have happened in your life, instead of making them stumbling blocks, you try to learn to make them stepping stones. And that's where I think that my research really gave me a great foundation to build on. Many times we're taught things when we're growing up that are not really based on truth. And today we live in a world where, unfortunately, truth has really lost a great step as far as being real for us. Even our news media, we find that it's very difficult to trust what we hear. And so looking into scripture, I can honestly say from all the research I've done, that is the most truthful book that has ever been written. Yeah. And there's nothing ever found that had, there's nothing in there that's not real and true.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple things along the line that I wanted to kind of touch on. Through the years, a lot of people have tried to prove the Bible wrong. But scientists have proven, there was a day that turned back. There was time, that was lost. They've proven, they found Noah's Ark. They've found the scrolls. Lee Strobel set out to prove, the Bible and God wrong, and he proved it correct.
Exactly right.
Huge in proving evolution wrong.
Right.
And so there are people like, well, you have to have faith in order to be a Christian. You do, but it's also true. And so, I'm not I'm a heart person. Usually people are heart or brain person. I'm a heart person. So that's kind of how I attack things and how I go at things. So when people with come to me with like scientific logic and stuff, I just kind of push them to those who have already done the research because that's not my area and I own it. I know it. But it's like a lot of people have tried to prove it wrong. Another thing you mentioned is scripture. There are many in this world who are chasing after something, whether it's money or fame or fortune. First of all, they can't take it with them.
Yes.
Second of all, it's usually more the relationships that you form throughout your life, or AKA the dash, between the date of your birth and the date of your death. That dash it will mean more when you are connecting with people as opposed to connecting with your pocketbook. But I have found throughout my life, there are many times where scriptures have encouraged me. One of my favorites, which is um, throughout my fiction books, is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper, not to harm, to give you a hope and a future. He's promised us in there to give us a hope and a future. He's promised us that we're here for a reason. If you're born for a reason. And he has a purpose for you. You just have to look in the right place to find it.
Exactly. And that, I think that's the thing that's so amazing to me is that, growing up for so many years, I heard all the science and all the negative. And at the same time, science was over here, religion was over here. But I could see the bigger picture. And so when I first started doing research a long, long time ago, now over 40 something years ago, my intent was to show that. And when I did my books, my publisher was like, really, you want to put it in a genre of science and religion? Those two things are so opposite of one another.
No, they're not.
But they're not. And really, our technology today has proven so much that people used to laugh about and say was not possible. And I really go into a lot of different areas and touch a lot of different sciences to really prove the scripture to be true. And like you say, the fact of Noah's Ark, the fact that the city of Nineveh, I mean, there's places that archaeologically we were told when I was growing up did not exist. But now with our capability of satellite and with imaging and with these abilities to look at topographical kinds of things on the earth, you really get an idea that until we got to that point of technology, did we understand that those cities were there all the time? They were right where the Bible said they were. When they dug down, they found pieces of things and artifacts that really prove. And it's just like with the Dead Sea Scrolls and finding more scrolls. Then you've got books of the Bible that were there. They weren't made up. They weren't created by someone, later in time. One of the things that I do research a lot is the Shroud of Turin, which is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, and the face napkin that formed over that shroud that was attached to it, that's in Oviedo, Spain, and how they all match scientifically. So there's a lot of things out there that I think that people have left religion looking for answers, and they got sucked down these rabbit holes of, Darwinism and evolution and other kinds of like Hinduism and things of that nature, where they try to become like little gods themselves, looking for answers. And the thing is, I've never been afraid to attack the big questions because I believed all the time that scripture, what it was said, was spot on. That there was not symbolic. It was not like you had to have more knowledge about something. But I do believe that because science has gotten to the point that it has, then like in my work, if I'm going to talk about a particular subject, then I can bring it, to the realization that this has already been told to us in scripture. Mm-hmm. And it makes everything so much easier to grasp. Maybe we were a lot like Thomas when Jesus had appeared to the disciples and Thomas was not there. The other disciples were like, "Hey, Thomas, we saw Jesus and he's alive." And Thomas says, "Until I see him myself and touch those nail scars in his hand, I'm not going to believe." So I think that what has happened in our generation is that science is literally making the doubt in Thomas leave,
Mhm.
because there was a time that the physics and people who studied physics and about the way the world was created and all those kinds of things, they really believed it was chaotic. But when you start looking at DNA and you start looking at all the intricate parts of atoms and protons and electrons and
Yep,
how this all
organism.
got a rhyme and a reason,
Uh-huh.
it has to be by design.
Mhm.
So now most of those people who once said it was not a created thing are having to change, because you don't get rhyme and reason without creation. And I think it's pretty amazing. And like I say, I enjoy talking about that in all of my books and all of my research, very detailed. But what it brings you back to is that you are here for a reason, and
Mhm.
you are not just a grain of sand. And one of the things I like to really promote is that when the sperm touches the egg, there is a burst of energy.
Mhm.
And science has literally proven that now, where they have taken pictures. We got scientific proof that there's this burst of energy. And when that happens, it proves that God knew you from the day that you were conceived. So when people start talking about it's okay to have an abortion, with so many years, or so many months into the process, or either taking the child out even after, after they've been born, getting rid of them, or dismissing the fact that if you just don't want a child, it's not really a soul, it doesn't have a purpose. The moment that that sperm touches that egg, and that energy is formed according to the law of thermodynamics. Energy made, once it's made, can never be destroyed. So people, when you came into existence, that burst of energy, you were alive.
Mhm.
And the thing about it is, when people try to say, well, when you die, it's just lights out, all the research that I've done on near death experiences, you have a body, you are a body, a spirit, and a soul.
Mhm.
When you step out of your body, which is your shell that we look like, you still look like yourself. Your mind is still intact. You know who you are. You can look down if you're in other words, if you're dying in a car accident and you have literally left your body, you can see you down there. But the thing about it is, you look at you above it and you're still you. So that energy is much like we see like ice and vapor and water. They're all H2O.
Mhm.
They're just in different states.
Right.
So, having the
Kind of like the egg,
science
you
help
have the
prove that.
shell. Yeah, it's kind of like the egg. You have the shell, the yolk, and the white, and it's all one thing. So, how did this become a passion for you?
Well, when I was a small child, I had a dream when I was 6 years old about the end of days. And I always felt like that dream was very significant, and I really wanted to know a lot about it. I tried to get people at the church to answer questions, and they would always be, oh, you're 6 years old. Don't worry about those kinds of things. But internally, I knew that something was really unusual about this,
Mhm.
and that I really had seen Jesus. I really believed that I did. And that what he had told me, that I needed to pay attention to it. And so I never got away from trying from that age to really identify with what was coming down the pipe. And so even though I studied, I really started out in school and college to become an attorney.
Mhm.
But God used that in what I do now, because when I write my work, it's like I'm presenting it to a jury and a judge. Here is what I have found, and I have covered every base. Now you tell me, kind of like what you were talking about, Lee's book. I've got this for you. This is the true facts along with the science. I mean, I've got you boxed in. Tell me that this is not real,
Mhm.
because it is real. And so it really drove me throughout my life, even though I was studying other facets of fields of study.
Mhm.
Counseling and guidance was one of those things with, the mind, the thought process, the psychic, all of those kind of things, along with human anatomy in my 4-year degree. I mean, I was very interested in all that. And then when I got my doctorate, it was just teaching me how to use the research that I could find and put it in a book, and then be able to describe it in such a way that you would have a profound effect on anyone that would be reading. And many times I say, I've done your research. If you will read this, then I'm telling you that there's nothing that is out there that does not prove that once we come into existence, we exist forever. When we leave this body in a state of death, we are really, the body may be dead, but we are not. In other words, there is a process, and you have an opportunity with a manual in place called the Bible to make a decision about your life. And that is the greatest decision you'll ever make, to choose between following Jesus and not following Jesus.
Right. Now, we need to backtrack a little bit because you kind of skipped over that journey thing. Because On the Journey is Real, it's about the journey as much as the passion. And I appreciate your passion. Trust me, I'm with you there. But what brought you there? Because you made a leap from lawyer to psychology to all of a sudden you're at the books. What was the leap? What was I know that you mentioned when you were younger, but there's a whole lot in there.
All the way through, from the time that I was a child, I had a drawing as if I was a watchman on the wall.
Okay.
Preparing people to understand the significance of your soul. Mm-hmm. And I think that desire for no one to be left behind because they did not know better, mm-hmm. or did not understand, it became my passion to try to show them the way, to bring them back from the rabbit holes that they had run out to. Because many times I do shows on paranormal, and I'm like, the Bible is the most paranormal book that's ever been written. Yeah, it has paranormal stuff in it. Yeah, paranormal.
I have some book series out, and in mine, the spiritual realm crosses into the physical.
That's right. And so
there's angels, there's demons, and it's happening like right on this plane. And so, yeah, a lot of people are like, well, how does that work? And I'm like, I'm sorry, have you not looked around? There's a lot
before your eyes.
I know there's a lot of things that people don't connect. Like my husband and I have a phrase. We don't use the word coincidence. We use a godcidence.
Because exactly, nothing is a coincidence. And when you do the research like you and I have done, that's when you know without a shadow of a doubt that everything has a rhyme, a reason, and a purpose behind it. And if you ever find that in your life, then you can look back. I know there's this thing about footprints that
starts to line up
one set, and Jesus was carrying you through that. But there is this process of where, like in my own life, I know that journey was to take me through all these fields of study to pick up all this science and all, because most times when you study in school, you have blinders on. They teach you physics and that's it. You don't see anything else.
Right.
With what my journey was, he took me to all these different places and all these fields of study so I could bring it all together in my books, make one big picture and make it clear as a bell. This is real. And now, you have a choice in it. Now, and I'm trying to give you that knowledge about that choice.
Right. Now you do a couple different mediums. It's not just your books. You've mentioned books. I know you're a speaker because I can tell by the way that you're talking to me. But there's actually another medium that you use as well, too. You have a very pretty voice.
Listen, I love music.
I know all of that is on your website. We have about 5 minutes left, and I don't want to miss that portion of it. For people who want to find out more about you online, how can they find you, and what will they find when they get there?
Oh, yes. My website is, of course, www.drjoye, and it's DRJOYE. That's joy with an E.com. And my Facebook page is Joye Pugh, P-U-G-H. But on my website, you can find my books that are there. You can also find my music. Mm-hmm. And yes, I'm a musician. I play a huge number of instruments. And so the CD that I did, went into the studio and was contracted to do, is with me playing all the instruments as well as singing. So I was the band as well as the singer. And of course,
unique. I didn't even know that.
And so those are all songs that I feel like the Lord laid upon my heart. I began as a poet, and so lyrics became very easy for me. And then, of course, with the music and being able to play a lot of instruments, it was a wonderful experience. So all of those songs are original songs. They are all upbeat. Some of them are sad. Some of them are happy. Some of them you can, you can kind of keep a little beat to. They're unique. And if you're interested in that, there's a submission form there on my website that you can send to tell me that you're interested in that. And I'll be glad to get the CD out to you for your request. And then with the books and everything, you can of course go to the links that are there with the books, and they'll take you to where you can purchase the books. And then, of course, if I've done radio and TV or anything, there'll be a link there usually to take you to those, as well as at my Facebook page. Facebook, I usually keep up with a lot of the podcasts and all that you can click on and continue to listen to through my Facebook page. And then I do a AMA show, Ask Me Anything show, every Monday night, the end of every month. At the end of the month on Monday night. So it's the last Monday night of every month from 8 to 10 on YouTube. I do an Ask Me Anything. And whoo, I'm going to tell you, CJ, I get some really pretty interesting questions. But
you're
it's
brave. I have a friend who does that too. And I'm just like, I'm not that brave. Nope.
I never know. It's like, and I like this because it makes me always stay on top of the game. It's like being in an emergency room and being an emergency room doctor, and you don't know what's coming through the door, but you've already got all this information and you're sure about your information because I've done so much research for so long. I'm sure about the information that I give out, but it's fun to know, well, what are they going to ask? And it can be anything. I mean, anything. But it's interesting because, again, my research is from A to Z. I mean, there's probably not any field of research that I don't bring in to my books. And so I usually, when somebody brings up something and I've never heard of it, then I'm like, and I'll tell them, I'm like, well, that's a new topic. I've never, ever heard of this, but I will promise you, I will find out and get you an answer because it will fall into something that probably I have understood either by another name or someone used a different term for it or whatever. But it's fun. It is like exciting to know what's coming. What's the next?
I'm not that brave yet.
but I really do love it. And it gives people a way to know that instead of like when I was little and I was asking questions and people were saying, well, it's not time to know and it's just symbolic and you're just young, don't worry about it. It gives you some person to say help. I mean, and some of the questions I have are very serious, like people who have OCD or some kinds of other anxiety difficulties, or even mental health issues that are really very serious, that will come on and ask and say, could this be demonically inspired? And you and I both know that when Jesus was on the face of this earth, the first thing he did was cast out demons. And what did they do? They talked to him and he talked back to them. And they ran into those pigs. And then, of course, we know the swine drowned themselves. But there is where you can get to a reality that some people really need to hear that, because there is an aspect of mental health that is involved with either demonic oppression or demonic possession. And because of the work that I've done, with exorcisms and understanding about that, then I'm willing to share it. And sometimes people do not want to ask those questions because they don't want someone to think they may be a little bit off or whatever. So I'm willing to talk about those things, hoping that it will also, anybody who's listening who has those issues, that it plants a seed to find out more about it, to seek a counselor, to seek someone to help them on a daily basis or a weekly basis or whatever. So I do a lot of that with the counseling and like I say, that submission form there is at my website, and they can go www.drjoye.com and fill it out and send it to me, and I'll bring up their question on a show.
There you go.
And then answer it live if they would like for me to do that. Of course, if they don't want to use their name, I'll do anonymous and first name. If they want to know it's them, I'll use their first name. And many times I've had people say, use my whole name. I want you to know that when you're answering it, this is for who it is. So it just depends on what they want to do. But it's a lot of fun and I enjoy it. I enjoy what I do, just like you do, CJ. It's a calling. And once you find your calling, it's a thrill to be able to lead people in the right direction with our lives.
Yeah, we're a little bit over time. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes. Is there anything you'd like to add?
The thing that I'd like to say is that I feel like your soul is your greatest asset. And like we mentioned earlier, your cars, your home, Everything around you are things.
Mhm.
Your soul is your greatest asset. The Bible has been given to you for a manual to make a decision about your future. And like I mentioned before, you do not die. You will never like die. You will live either in paradise or you will live in hell. And those types of living will be a positive situation or a very negative situation for all eternity. So I ask that you take time to understand why you're here. And that's one of the things that I do with my books is to try to help you understand why you're here so you make the right choices. Because when it's all said and done, like you mentioned, CJ, you don't take your piano with you. When you close your eyes or when you leave your body, it's you. When you stand before the creator, it is you. You'll never be able to blame it on somebody else. So take time now to make the right decisions because eternity is a very long time and your soul is your greatest asset.
Mhm.
Always remember, you're not just a grain of sand floating in the wind.
Awesome.
The rhyme and reason behind it.
One thing I like to say to kind of break it down to being simple is people are like, well, I wish life had a manual. And I'm like, well, Bible stands for basic instructions before leaving Earth. I mean, you can't get any better of a manual than that.
You
So
can't.
I really appreciate all the work that you do. And thank you for sharing today. And you were a joy to talk to, Joy.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. And for those who want to learn more about Dr. Joy, you can find her at www.drjoye.com. And I do want to thank you guys for listening to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. I'm CJ Peterson of cjpetersonwrites.com. Until next time.